And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's RBLR Sports.
What's up, gang? What's up, RBLR Nation? We're Carter Brantley, and we're the wonderful co-host, the South Region Zach Blaine. It's always the South Coast up to the before.
We're doing good so far. It was for me, I'm going to be honest with you, it was a little bit more of a meaningless loss. So for that reason, obviously, I had some different views. But, the big thing was just seeing, how our backups be doing. And I'm just going to be honest with you right now. I mean, all eyes were on Mr. Trash Train, the guy I've been, yapping about for the last, 2 years or so, a year and a half or whatever. But, we finally saw some Trask action, and that's really about it. Obviously, you still want to win, so that sucks. But then again, from my perspective, I'm looking at the playoffs right now, even before this Falcons game.
For sure. Yeah, man. I feel you. It's definitely been a weird week with the meaningless games and all, but Zach Blaine, we also got you, the Blaine train. Say what's up to the people for us, brother.
What's going on, guys? How y'all been?
Doing well. Another week, just living lavish, just chilling.
Hey, trying to, right?
Indeed. Yeah, but it was a loss, a loss is a loss. We'll get into it. We're probably not going to spend too much time on it because it was just like Musab said, just a very meaningless loss. We'll talk a little bit about the Trask train, as Musab so affectionately put it. We'll see. We'll talk about it. But a little update first from our last week's episode. Fortunately, safety Damar Hamlin from the Buffalo Bills has been discharged from a Buffalo hospital, so his recovery is going real well. It's amazing to hear. We all of us really throughout America, but especially here at RBLR Sports, we're hoping for a continued speedy recovery for him. Also, continue to donate to his Chasing M's charity. It's still a wonderful cause. They got the toy drive and stuff. We got the link on our Twitter page, all of that stuff. Definitely great to hear that Mr. Hamlin's doing well. Like we said, the Bucs Falcons game just kind of a bummer, but not really a huge one. It happens. That's just how it be sometimes. 30-17, the Falcons won. Just ho-hum. Not really affecting either team. We saw some initial thoughts. What do you think about the game? Obviously, it was a loss. You kind of gave us some initial thoughts before, but if you want to expand on anything, go ahead, brother.
Just really anything to expand on is just the fact that our backup should just be doing the best they can right now. We went through a very interesting sort of season, and for that reason, I feel like maybe towards the end of the season, ideally, you want to start throwing in these backups because, you have it in the bag. But, we barely scraped by. A lot of people have been telling me it looks really odd that, the Bucs have a losing record, yet they're still in the, the playoffs.
For sure.
And, it's right. They're right about it. It is really weird. But long story short, I mean, for me, all I'm getting out of that game is that, we have a lot of work to do even with our backups. This is not something where it's like, oh, okay, if the backups hop in, maybe we can scrape by. As of right now, realistically, I'm looking at is, if the backups have to come through, we're going to be in trouble.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, like you said, the backups didn't look great, but, they're backups for a reason, unfortunately. If there are some players if there is a team that loses any significant players like that, then they're going to look pretty bad too, especially with all due respect to Kyle Trask. It was his first outing. It was his first game. He looked a little rough around the edges, and understandably so. He was playing with other backups against a team that still had their starters out there. And, the Falcons aren't great. They're not a very good team, but they're still an NFL team, and there are still some very respectable, very talented players on the other side of that ball. Zach, how about you? What are some initial thoughts on the Bucs-Falcons game, if anything meaningful can be gleaned from this meaningless affair?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key takeaway is, what do we do when Brady's gone? Because the odds of him signing back with Tampa at this point probably aren't very high. So you look at that game and it's like, all right, what do we have on deck already? And the fact that I think Kyle Trask had, 9 pass attempts?
Yep, 3 for 9.
Yeah, so when you look at that, it's how do you put any weight on that with him getting 9 pass attempts? It just didn't feel like they were giving him I don't want to say fair shot, but a legitimate shot to kind of prove himself. And it kind of opened my eyes a little bit to maybe we're not ready for Brady to be gone yet.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, dark days are ahead once Brady leaves. That is for sure. Because there's not a lot of cap room. Those voidable years are incoming. They're coming. The Grim Reaper's coming. And you've seen it with the Saints. You saw it with the Eagles for a few years after that Super Bowl run. They were going through a rough stretch themselves just because they invested a lot of money into an old roster, and the Bucs have kind of done the same thing here. And after Brady's gone, they're gonna either have to sign someone for cheap or they're gonna have to run Trask out there. And it don't look too good. But let's move on, because this game, like we said, it's so meaningless. The playoffs are coming. That's the exciting part. The Bucs are 8-9. Sure, it's a losing record, like Musab said. It's a weird look, but hey, they're in the playoffs, and anything can happen in the postseason. It's all kind of, all bets are off, so to speak. What's
now,
that?
I'll say real quick, on Twitter at RBLR Sports, we posted something about player of the game. I wanted to see if you guys wanted to touch on that at all.
Oh,
Even though
yeah.
it was a short game, but
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the player of the game it's kind of tough to pick a player of the game in this kind of game, because it's just, it's really brutal. I mean, it's tough, but I mean, the poll was out there and Chris Godwin won. He got 30% of the vote. Hey, that's me personally, I voted for Russell Gage because he had that touchdown pass, and he sacrificed himself in a Week 18 meaningless matchup. Hurt his back or something, and that did look rough. I hope
it did.
Soon. Yeah, I hope he recovers soon. But I know you're playing against your former team. You certainly want to go all out like Russell Gage was. I thought he should have won. Obviously, the people disagreed, but Chris Godwin won that poll. How about y'all, Musab? Who was your kind of player of the game for this past week?
I'm going Antoine Winfield just because he was just a dog looking out there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's a final game or whatever, but the only reason this team will make it as far as it will is because of the defense. It's been coming through game by game. Less eyes on them, more eyes on the offense, just because. Sure, the defense is not perfect, but it's a lot less of an issue compared to the offense. And someone like Antoine Winfield, the veteran, now that we know him, who he is and all that, the fact that he's still coming in through, it shows us that, we have, DBs that are looking hot. And that's what I'm really looking at right now, because if we are to make it as far as possible, all eyes on the DBs then, what I'm saying? We'll protect Brady as much as we can and all that, but when it comes to our defense, especially those DBs, which we've been having an issue on and off in the past couple of years.
For sure. Yeah, that's a great point. I can't tell you how many times I've seen the Bucs secondary or a corner just get absolutely torched. It's definitely frustrating to watch. Zach, how about you? You have a player of the game. You also Antoine Winfield Jr.?
Oh, 100%. He played the whole game because we didn't have any.
No more bodies, right?
No more. Yeah, they literally said if we took Winfield Jr. out, we would have had to put a lineman back there.
Right.
So I think that plays into his character a little bit, as like, I know it's a meaningless game. We're already in the playoffs, but the team needs me to play the whole game. I'm going to play the whole game. And he put up numbers that were really good. I mean, 13 tackles. He had a quarterback hit. I don't see how we voted for Godwin to win player of the game with 6 catches, 55 yards, and a fumble. It just it didn't make any sense to me. I was watching the ticker as it was going. I was like, man, what is happening? What are we looking at?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like kind of more of a popularity contest.
100%.
That's kind of the point. But in their defense, Chris Godwin also, that he broke some milestones. He broke the 1,000-yard milestone. He broke the 100-yard reception milestone, and he's coming off of a torn ACL. So from that perspective, I see where the general public is coming from, because you want to kind of give him his props in a meaningless game, because he's in the running for comeback player of the year, or what is it? One of those awards, kind of that general consensus. But I feel like Geno Smith's going to win that, and rightfully so. Coming from
he deserves it.
For sure. But Chris Godwin's got to get his props too, because he's coming off a ridiculous injury like that and having one of the most productive years he's had. So it's really, really impressive from a statistical standpoint. But I'm glad you brought that up, Zach. That was a good point. So yeah, now kind of moving on to the Cowboys preview, because this is what we're all here for. This is what Bucs fans are gearing up, ready for Monday Night Football. They got all the festivities going on at Raymond James. ESPN is kind of setting up camp there, doing a lot of pregame shows. So it should be a really, really fun atmosphere, a really fun time. I know I'm pretty excited for it. I'm sure y'all are too. So yeah, it's a huge game. It's a playoff game. There's really no overselling it. Win or go home, that whole spiel. So, kind of first focusing on the Bucs side of things, because, this is a Bucs show. Looking at the injury report, it's tough. It's extensive. But the good news is that most of them practiced, in some form or fashion. Some of them were limited. Some of them were full. But, going into this first day of practice, I was a little concerned, because, they had you could pretty much fill out a whole lineup with that team.
Yeah.
It was kind of nuts. You maybe have to put someone at quarterback, but regardless, it was concerning. So it was really good to see so many people participating in practice today. How do we think moving forward the Bucs can just stay healthy? What are some initial thoughts on this game? Musab, we'll start with you. What are some kind of first things that pop into your head when you're thinking about this Bucs-Cowboys matchup coming up on Monday?
Well, Carter, as you mentioned, it's a win or go home kind of situation right now. On top of that, we already beat them 19-3 this season. But for me, it's again, looking at the injury report, it's a little bit concerning. Fortunately, yeah, we see a lot of guys practicing. We'll see how it turns out, on game day, whatever, right? And I'm not going to say that, this team is going to be that, oh my God, like we're in the playoffs now, and now it's time to tighten up, and now it's time to win the Super Bowl. All right, let's be a little realistic round by round. All right. But I will have to say that, if we do tighten up a little bit, I really do think that we're able to succeed, and we'll beat the Cowboys. But right now, I'm a little bit 50-50, only because of what we're looking at right now, Carter, with his injury report. Yeah, absolutely, as you said, we can get a whole lineup or whatever. So for me, I'm thinking, all right, let's hope for the best or whatever. But this is going to be an interesting dogfight for sure, because the Cowboys been warming up. I ain't gonna lie to me. A lot of people have been hating on Dak Prescott, but
Rightfully so, though.
this is the first round. You know what I'm saying? So it's one thing if we're talking already Super Bowl, but this is the first round. You know what I'm saying? And it's been a weird year for the whole NFL. So we'll see how this plays out. But yeah, I'm staying optimistic. I think things should work out well. Zach, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I don't think I'm as optimistic as you are. I have hope. I want us to be obviously there at the end, but I think the big thing is we look at the 19-3 win. Brady's 7-0 against Dallas. All this, they're setting up this narrative, and it feels like, all right, so Brady's going to go 8-0. We're going to win easily against Dallas, but you look at the trajectory of the two teams, where Dallas has looked very good at times, and more times than not have looked very good. And you look at Tampa, and you look at that 19-3 win, and that was one of our higher scoring games of the year. So it just feels like it's kind of opposite trajectories for both teams, and it's kind of scary. If we want to win, we're going to have to our defense is going to have to eat. They're going to have to show us why Dak has thrown 15 interceptions in 12 games, like why he leads the league or tied for the league in interceptions with 5 games missed. Like it's going to be a dogfight if our defense can keep us in it, because their defense is solid enough.
For sure. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I mean, focusing on, like you said, Dak has thrown interceptions in 7 straight weeks, or at least 1 interception in 7 straight weeks, which is pretty ugly. And yeah, the 15 and 12 games, that's not quite Jameis Winston numbers, but still not too good. So yeah, I mean, I love the fact that Musab mentioned the fact that the entire, like we've been saying, almost you can say an entire lineup's on the injury report, and it's nice that everyone practiced, but you have to factor in the fact fatigue, tiredness. This is technically, if you want to call it week 19, quote unquote. It's the 18th game of the season. These guys, everyone's banged up, but the guys listed on the injury report, especially, just because they're practicing, just because they play, no one's going to be really 100%. And that's going to be a huge factor in this game. It's always a huge factor in the playoffs, just kind of a war of attrition. Whoever's got the freshest bodies, so to speak. It's kind of a rough way of putting it. But speaking of injuries, Ryan Jensen has been also practicing on the field. They're still kind of playing things close to the chest, or just kind of waiting for things to play out, see how he progresses. They haven't made any definitive statements whether or not he's going to play this Monday. Todd Bowles has been very mum. He's just been, hey, par for the course. We're just going to see how it goes. So what are y'all's thoughts? Like, how big of a loss, or not loss, but how big of a plus, because they haven't had him all year. So they've kind of been used to it, but how big of an addition is Ryan Jensen if he is able to go out there and give it a go? Musab, we'll start with you. What do you think the impact that Ryan Jensen has on this team if he is able to suit up and play on Monday?
Listen, we'll throw him in Monday. I think he'll still be able to make somewhat of a difference, but he needs a little bit more time to warm up. You can't expect to throw a guy in there like him and be like, all right, boom, make a difference, or, help us out big time or something. But I'm hoping that, if he plays, throughout the whole game here and there, whatever, it depends on the coaching staff as to how much they really throw him in. I'm just hoping he has a good influence, you know what I'm saying? Because, this is Ryan Jensen we're talking about. I feel like, we were all very, very bummed out to hear that he was out, for the season. And the fact that he's coming back, it means a lot for us. And I'm hoping for the team, especially the offensive line, If he steps in, I think we'll make some changes. But again, I mean, we're taking this game by game. It's one thing if we're coming in hot, during this playoffs, but right now, I mean, it's 50-50 for me. So will he make a difference? Yeah, but how much, during his first game? I don't know.
For sure. That's a good point. And I think it's really interesting to see, or it will be interesting to see, how they utilize Robert Hainsey. He's obviously a limited participant, Wednesday at practice, or Thursday, So, it'll be tough to see how he moves forward, or if he's able to go as well. If he is and Jensen's able to go, do they move Hainsey to the left guard position? He's kind of been able to play different positions throughout his career. He's mostly been center this year because of Jensen's injury, but yeah, that'll definitely be something to look for as well. That's a great point, Musab. He makes a big impact, but we can't expect him. We can't expect the Ryan Jensen of old immediately right off the bat. Zach, how about you? What are some thoughts from you about Ryan Jensen, his impact, and et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I'm more on the side of if Robert Hainsey can go, I don't think we risk it with Jensen, because there's and like I don't want that to come off as like I don't think Jensen's that good. Like I think he's one of the best centers in the game, 100% without argument. Like I think that he's top 3 center in the game
for sure.
But there's gonna be rust. Like when a fighter gets in the ring after a 2-year layoff, it's ring rust. I don't know what you call it, field rust. I don't know what you would call it, but there's going to be some rust there. He's not going to be 100% his first game. No one ever is. So it feels like if Robert Hainsey's a go, I say we dress Jensen, have him on the sideline. If we need him, then we put him in. But I'd rather have a fully healthy Jensen next year than 60 to 70% Jensen for one game if we get eliminated this week.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, and it's a tough game to play your first game of the season in. He's facing the Cowboys. They've got that ridiculous pass rush. Lawrence and Parsons are just monsters.
Mm-hmm.
They move all over the place. I mean, Lawrence can line up inside. He can line up outside. Ditto that for Parsons. My guess is one of them is going to be picking on Donovan Smith all game, and then the other is going to line up over the left guard position or the center and just kind of go to work inside because those are the Bucs' weak points. But we'll see how that plays out. We'll see how that goes. The Bucs did an okay job against him in that Week 1 matchup, but this is a very different Cowboys team than the Bucs faced in Week 1. They're a lot more confident. They've had a big season defensively. They're the best team in the league for takeaways. They've got 33 of them. They're second in turnover differential. It's just the defense has been really, really good. Micah Parsons especially has been a Defensive Player of the Year candidate all year. It's a ridiculous lineup and really difficult matchup for a guy to come in and play his first game. Speaking of the Cowboys, now we can kind of shift our focus to them. What are some kind of initial thoughts on them? Just some kind of key things to look for when they face the Bucs on Monday. Musa, we'll start with you. You looking more on the offensive side of the ball, maybe more on the defensive side of the ball, looking at Dak, Ezekiel Elliott, and Tony Pollard. What are we looking for with the Cowboys?
A little bit of both on both ends. But, I don't know. I mean, for me, last time I saw the Bucs, as you mentioned, Parsons, he was kind of embarrassing us a little bit, it was the first, one of the first few games of the season and all that, but still, this team's coming through for some reason. I feel like, I don't have too much to compliment them for, but I also don't have anything really to specifically insult them for. I mean, they also made it through, and as you mentioned, they got Dak, Zeke, and Pollard on the offensive side, and on the defensive side, they got some studs like Parsons, as you mentioned. So I'm thinking, it's really on both ends. This is going to be kind of that good game to show you, hey, listen, welcome to the playoffs. If you can't beat this, then golly, you're in trouble. And even if we scrape by, I'm not gonna start running around thinking, boom, look at that, we made it to the next round, hashtag go Bucs, blah blah blah. I'm thinking, okay, well, let's see, first of all, who the opponent is, and second of all, how hot they're coming in, what's our team looking like next week. So after Monday, I may or may not have different feelings, but as of right now, I'm thinking it comes down to the defense and the offense. I'm looking a little bit more on the offense. I think the defense came through last time we played them. Big shout out to them, but it's just, Zach mentioned it. I never know when it may happen. Fortunately, it hasn't happened, but come playoff time, our opponents are coming in hotter, and I would hate for someone like Tom Brady to go down, because if he goes down, we all go down, and there's the end of it.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of contingent upon Tom Brady, as a lot of it's on his shoulders. But, yeah, it's definitely going to be up to the defenses, because it was such a defensive battle last time, and the offenses have seemed to kind of struggle so mightily recently, really throughout the season. The Cowboys with turnovers and the Bucs just scoring the ball in general. Zach, how about you? What are some initial thoughts on the Cowboys? Just kind of what your focus is on so far.
Yeah, I know that the Cowboys have had, I say Dak really. Like, I know it's the Cowboys as a whole, but Dak has had a lot of turnovers. But that offense can put up points.
Sure.
They're the only team that beat Philadelphia. Lost 2 games or 3?
I believe 2, but
2. Yeah, I know they lost both games against Dallas, and Philadelphia is, in my opinion, as much as I hate to admit it, one of the best teams in the NFL right now. Their defense is ridiculous, and so when I look at that, say it again. Sorry.
They lost 3 games. They only lost once to the Cowboys, though.
Oh, was it only once? I thought they were both their losses at a point. All right. Well, my bad. Thank you for correcting me, Carter.
For sure. No, you're good.
But the game that the Cowboys beat them in, they put up, it was like ridiculous numbers. When you look at it, not only do they have Elliott and Pollard, they have CeeDee Lamb, they have Michael Gallup. That offensive line is insane. They got T.Y. Hilton now, who looks like he's hit the fountain of youth and can play legitimate football again. So I think that our defense is going to have to step up because our offense, I think, is going to be kind of stagnant again with guys like Parsons and Lawrence rushing the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely – I think that defensive line is a super huge focus for myself. Yeah, I mean, but obviously it's really going to be interesting to see how Dak is able to kind of bounce back. He's been struggling a lot recently, especially last week against the Commanders. I mean, my goodness, it was just
that was an awful game for
Dallas. It was an ugly way to end the season, and given it turned out to be a very pointless game because they ended up as just a wild card anyways because Philly won. But man, I mean, it just because it's not like they were resting anyone. It's not like they were holding anything back, and they came out and kind of had a dud of a game. So that was definitely tough. But what's not a dud is the RBLR shop. That place is just bussin'. It has a multitude of options, just so many threads, so many just amazing opportunities to increase your wardrobe, show off the flyness, support the local Tampa Bay teams. And we got a promo code for you, 10% off. That's Cannons. And just type that bad boy in there. The link's in the description to the store. And, type that bad boy in there for 10% off your total order. Check it out. You gotta do it. You got to do it to them. But yeah, that's our shameless plug for the night. So we've kind of talked about a little bit of both sides. So what are some ways that the Bucs can beat the Cowboys, repeat their week one success? Because we've kind of talked about both sides, and that's, obviously the goal is to win the game, obviously. So, how do they make that happen? Musab, we'll start with you. What are some key things that need to go right for the Bucs to win this game Monday?
Well, first of all, I mean, it's having a good lineup or at least a decent lineup. But on top of that, I mean, it's firing on all cylinders. I'm talking we need to start going hard. I really do think so. All right. It's not really about all blood, sweat, and tears in the first quarter, but we have to start popping off. Maybe we have to change up the game a little bit. We have to play a little bit some tricky football or something, but we really do need to change it if we want to succeed in the playoffs. No one cares that, okay, congratulations, you made the playoffs. We've had an icky season so far, and I'm just hoping that we make it as far as possible, okay? So for me, that's what it is just kind of staying aggressive on both ends. I mean, the big issues we're talking about, DBs, O-line, okay? Those are the big two kind of things I'm, going to be nitpicking on during this playoffs if, we keep going on and on because it all comes down to, how our offensive line protects Tom Brady and how our DBs do against these receivers. I understand that, sometimes, the rush game of our opponents, gets the best of us, but I'm not too worried about that compared to those two things. But yeah, I guess those are my top two or, top three.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, those are definitely some great points. That two-headed rushing monster of Zeke and Tony Pollard is definitely brutal. They've combined themselves for over 1,800 yards this year. Pollard averages 5+ yards a carry, which is disgusting. He's got a bunch of 20+ yards carries. He's just really, really electrifying, really, really fast. Like you said, I'm definitely going to look for guys like Devin White, Levante David to step up as well and just kind of plug those holes or clean up the defensive line's messes just because, these guys are electrifying. The Cowboys have a pretty decent offensive line. They got Zach Martin, Tyrone Smith, and who's their center? Tyler Biadasz, I think is his name. It's
like the BIAD.
Right, yeah. He's questionable for this week, along with Leighton Vander Esch for the Cowboys. But if he's healthy, he's a pretty solid center. Regardless, those two linebackers and the defensive line definitely going to play a key role. Zach, how about you, brother? How are we feeling about it? What are some ways or what are some things you want to look for the Bucs to beat the Cowboys on Monday?
If the Bucs beat the Cowboys on Monday, it is because of the defense. There's no two ways about it. We're not going to go out and put up 40 points on their head. So if we're going to walk away with this with a win, it's because our defense showed up and and got takeaways and stopped Zeke and Pollard, because I mean those are two legitimate starting running backs. Like those two could start on almost any team in the NFL, and almost, because obviously like they're not going to replace Dalvin Cook or Derrick Henry, but pretty much any other roster, in my opinion, they are legitimate starters on. So when you look at that and see that they have two running backs that really are one running back at a time, obviously is getting the ball. So when we get into the fourth quarter, when one running back will be getting tired, they have only half the workload of a normal starting running back, because there's two of them that can do the exact same thing, basically.
Yeah.
So it's gonna come down to the stamina of our defense and how good they can be up against that front seven for Dallas.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely brutal when you've got the two starting caliber running backs going at the same time, because they are very, they can both attack you and both rip you for big plays, but they also both kind of offer a bit of a change of pace too. Zeke's very much a power runner, and he'll be the red zone guy because, he's got 12 touchdowns for the year. They'll kind of bring him in to pound it in, just take care of it, do the dirty work. And Tony's definitely more of a setup guy. So if you want to, bring baseball into it, Zeke's kind of the closer. Tony Pollard's kind of the setup man. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic they have, but Zeke is certainly a tremendously talented guy. He can certainly step in and fill in as an electrifying running back as well. So they both can kind of do the same thing, but they both kind of specialize in their roles, it seems like. So yeah, I mean, we've talked kind of a lot about the defense, but kind of shifting focus to the Bucs offensively. How scared are we as watchers of Minka Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence just kind of eating up this offensive line and making Brady look like a 45-year-old man? Wissam, we'll start with you. How worried are you about Minka Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence getting after Tom Brady in this kind of shaky offensive line?
I am worried, as you said, kind of shaky. I mean, it's looking straight up shaky to me. Yeah, honestly. So it's just it is scary. We're coming to the playoffs, and not just for our team, for every single team. It's win or go home. So every single team is now putting their blood, sweat, and tears out there. Trying to win this game or the next games. And for me, it is a little bit concerning to think about, how Tom Brady and his O-line are going to look against, people like Parsons and Lawrence. I'm hoping our offensive weapons can, make something work out or whatever. I know they're going to come in hot. I know there's no way to absolutely avoid this. It's going to happen, but my issue is how many times is it going to happen? And that's what I'm looking at. What are the preventative measures we can take? So
don't play.
That's basically all we can I have to say, when it comes to people like Parsons and Lawrence, coming at us, we're gonna have to think about these things, kind of drive by drive. Okay, maybe this drive, our strategy didn't work out. Let's try maybe something a little bit different, especially quarter by quarter, half by half. Now come playoff time, we're gonna need to experiment a little bit. I don't encourage too much experimenting. I think that's just gonna be super ugly. But then again, there's some adjustments we still need to make. I mean, I know it's playoff times. We don't have it in the books right now. All right, there's no kind of safe kind of plays or choices or whatever. I love our team. I think we have a bunch of great guys, but the chemistry is just not looking there as it was compared to last year.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And speaking of last year, I mean, the past two seasons, the Bucs have had Gronk, and as amazing as of a receiver as he is, I think his contributions as a blocker was even greater. And I think this is going to be one of those games where they really, really miss Gronk. I think we're going to see a lot of O'Keefe kind of stepping in there, a lot of Josh Wells kind of being a sixth offensive lineman, so to speak. But there's kind of issues there too, because the past couple of years they've been able to run three wide receivers out there. They had Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. They'd be able to run those guys out there, and they'd get open regardless of who else was running out there with them. So it was just, they would be ridiculous. And this year, it doesn't seem like that's been the case. And that's a really tough thing, especially against a really good pass rush. Zach, how about you? I know you've been making some grimacing faces about this topic, and rightfully so. So how worried are you about this, Micah Parsons and the Cowboys pass rush against this Bucs offensive line?
Yeah, I'm terrified. I'm just looking for the over-under on sacks in this game, and I think I'm betting the over, whatever it is.
Right.
As much as I hate to say it, with our offensive line being as shaky as it is, and Brady being a 45-year-old quarterback who was never fast, never had any mobility, so now it's even worse at 45. It could end. I'm not saying it's going to end like injury bad, but it's going to be an ugly game. I think Brady's jersey is going to be stained quite a bit. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have to agree with you. I'm afraid he's going to feel the turf of Jerry World, AT&T Stadium, whatever you want to call it. It's Raymond James. What am I talking about? He's going to.
I thought we were at home.
The Bucs are. Yeah, my bad. He's going to get a lot of Raymond James turf on his jersey for sure, or grass, whatever they use. It's definitely going to be ugly. The problem, I think the issue, the consensus that we're kind of coming to is more not necessarily about if, but more about how much, more about when, like how often is it going to happen? Can the Bucs kind of limit it? And, if there's one thing that Tom Brady's done this season, it's get rid of the ball very quickly. It seems like he's retained that kind of quick release, which is really impressive. He's probably one of the best, if not the best in football at that, despite his struggles, despite the offense's struggles this season. So hopefully that can kind of come into play. It kind of gets a little dangerous because, which we're kind of moving on to our next topic, the Cowboys have so many takeaways. They have 33. They've got two corners, Trayvon Diggs and the rookie Dayron Bland. They've combined for 8 picks by themselves this season, and they are both really, really good at taking advantage of missed throws, just poorly timed routes, whatever the case may be. So how kind of shifting our concern to the Cowboys secondary, how can the Bucs kind of make sure that they don't fall victim and become like the rest of the league and just throw a bunch of interceptions? Musab, we'll start with you. It does seem like Brady's one strength this season has been his lack of interceptions. So how do the Bucs keep that going against a team that takes advantage of that?
Just being more careful. Listen, it comes down to, how much does the offensive line protect you? If you have some time, make these, kind of good throws or whatever, good plays. And, God forbid, you're in an emergency situation, then, you have to just make something happen. But I'm also hoping that, the run game looks pretty hot. Now, as you mentioned, Carter, they're going to be coming in hot. So I'm thinking about our run game as well. Okay. So we don't have to include these kind of DBs in the run game. But we'll see how that kind of works out as well, just because, again, as you mentioned, we're facing a pretty solid defensive line. You got people like Parsons and Lawrence, as you mentioned earlier. And, we'll see how that goes. But we're going to have to kind of play it a little even, or I don't know, maybe lean a little bit more towards the run game, depending on how we're doing. But it is scary indeed, just because if the offensive line is looking off, we're going for a throw. We think we might have it, but then again, out of nowhere, boom, comes this defensive line of the Cowboys / the DBs. Something happens, and we've seen it this past season, so it's not like it's going to be anything new to us. But the pressure cannot get to us, Carter. That's really what it is. It all comes down to how much pressure we're actually getting. So I know it's going to be there, but again, as you said, how many times? I don't know, but hopefully not too many times.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I love that you brought up the running game, because, some draws could be great to kind of slow down that pass rush, make those edge rushers kind of hesitate for a second before they, just pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. And that's something the Bucs have struggled with all year. So it would be really, really nice to see them get the running game going, whether it's Lenny, playoff Lenny comes out, or whether it's the rookie Rashad White, or, someone random like Keyshawn Vaughn or Giovanni Bernard, whoever it is, it'd be awesome to see someone step up and kind of, take that problem head on. Zach, how about you? How do you think the Bucs can kind of limit turnovers and avoid, given this really, opportunistic secondary more chances to take advantage of some interceptions?
Yeah, I think you guys have both touched on it. We got to rely on our run game more, and unfortunately, it hasn't been very reliable. But if it can somehow turn around to our Monday night, then I think that we have a shot of avoiding those turnovers. And if we can't rely on the run game, then it needs to be short, intermediate passes. We can't you can't expect Trayvon Diggs to get beat too many times downfield. Even though he is known for that, I don't think we have a speed guy that can just completely blow by Trayvon Diggs. He's so good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. The Bucs have definitely missed that speed element all year, and I think it might rear its ugly head, unfortunately, more so in the playoffs than anything else, just because everything comes down to those little things, those little matchups like that. So speaking of matchups, what are some key ones? Because we've kind of been talking about them off and on, but there's some that we haven't necessarily mentioned. The Bucs pass rush versus this Cowboys offensive line, without Shaq, and Shaq was kind of off to begin the season anyways, but he's obviously injured now, unfortunately. So now it's JTS and Carl Nassib. They have racked up a lot of snaps over the past few weeks. They have been playing almost every snap for the past few weeks, and it's been taxing. You can kind of see it. They just haven't been getting after the quarterback as well against a really good Cowboys offensive line as well. So that's a big one to look at. Obviously, we mentioned the rushing duo of Zeke and Tony Pollard versus this Bucs front seven. Tom Brady and the playmakers against the Cowboys secondary and the Cowboys defensive line versus the Bucs offensive line. Are there any that we haven't mentioned, or maybe there's one that you want to highlight that I mentioned? Musab, we'll start with you. What are some key matchups for this game?
Key matchup for me is honestly just the offensive line versus the Cowboys defensive line. I think I've seen what our defense is capable of doing, but our offense, I know what our wide receivers and running backs are capable of doing, but I haven't seen, obviously it's understandable, but I haven't seen a nice solid game for the offensive line. We have too many darn issues. Obviously it's understandable. We have injuries, and now we're looking at so many other injuries, as of right now, we have guys practicing. That's a whole different spiel I could go on, but looking at it, the big matchup is this, O-line versus D-line of the Cowboys. It all comes down to pressure, It's playoff time. I think the defense I'm a lot more optimistic for compared to the offense. The offense needs to strategize it more. Offensive coordinator Byron Leftwich needs to, kind of have some tricks up his sleeve, maybe just to scrape away this win. I don't know, but we got work to do, and I'm just staying optimistic, and those are just kind of my hot takes as to what we should do.
Byron could just stay home. We could just let Brady call the game. It'd probably go a little bit better.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm sure, something or someone could take over that job.
Very easily.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't mean to just go at Byron Leftwich either, but
I do.
I don't know. There's just some things we have to think about on the offensive side, especially because this is not some kind of guy like, late 20s, early 30s QB, looking amazing, the guy's getting old and we have to protect him. And on top of that, we have to protect our running backs. It doesn't even come down to him, getting injured. It's just, how many times is he going to get sacked, or how many times is he going to get so pressured that instead of being sacked, he just throws some odd ball in the air and boom, there you go. Cowboys interception.
Yeah, I love the fact you brought up Byron Leftwich, because that's kind of something that I kind of left out. It's almost a coaching matchup. Kellen Moore, the Cowboys offensive coordinator, versus Byron Leftwich or Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles, the defensive guy, and or Dan Quinn, the Cowboys defensive coordinator, versus Byron Leftwich. It's just it's brutal. The Bucs are kind of outmatched in that regard, unfortunately. Hopefully we're wrong. Hopefully Byron Leftwich has just been kind of playing mum and playing this low key offensive game plan because he knows that the Bucs are going to make the playoffs and he wants to unleash everything now. But I don't know.
Be nice.
That would be lovely. That would be wonderful. But I just really don't see that happening at this point. And we've been talking a lot of smack about Byron, and he deserves it a lot. And I got to say, if he wasn't so weirdly arrogant in these press conferences, I would feel worse about it. But
that's the thing, bro.
Yeah,
He comes into it and he's like, "No, we're not bad."
Right? Yeah, it's like
bottom half of every statistic in the league. What do you mean you're not bad?
Right. Like he went up there and was like, I think I think everyone's just acting out of emotion in these things. Like, we're not as bad as that. And it's like, my brother in Christ, like we have half of the touchdowns that the Bucs have scored. What are you talking about? But anyways, I need to get off my soapbox about Byron Leftwich. Zach, are there any other key matchups that you got moving forward, or anything that we haven't touched on in this episode that you want to look at going into Monday?
No, I mean, I think that's pretty much it. We touched on the coaching aspect of it, which was where I was going to go, because we really are outclassed in every coaching category that there is against Dallas. Like, Dan Quinn is a hell of a defensive coordinator. Todd Bowles as a head coach, and I don't even know who our actual defensive coordinator is, but I think it's probably still him.
Yeah.
Because, like, he's not as good as Dan Quinn. He's not as good as Mike McCarthy. And then we get to offense, and Byron and Kellen Moore, like, that's not even a competition. I think he's one of the best. I think Kellen's one of the best offensive coordinators in the game. So it just feels like everywhere we look, it's just setting up for, if we win, it's going to be one of the bigger upsets of the playoffs, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned Kellen Moore, and that's a great point, because he's going to be, I think he's going to be a head coach pretty soon. If not this season, then maybe next, because he's definitely kind of got that vibe about him. And
I'll take him in Tampa any day.
Right, yeah. I mean, he's been leading some very successful offenses. But we've kind of talked this game to death, so let's get down to it. Prediction time. Musab, we'll start with you. What do you think the final score is going to be? Who you got winning?
Ooh, this is going to be a close one. I'm thinking 24-21 Buccaneers.
Ooh.
I think it's going to be a dogfight back and forth. I mean, I'm talking we're going to scrape by. We'll see how, the following weeks go when the next round goes, but I think the Buccaneers come through, or hopefully they do. But Zach, Carter, what are we thinking?
Oh, okay, Zach, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I want them to pull through, and so that's why I'm going with my prediction, because my predictions are wrong. If anyone ever listened to the RBLR, the USFL show we had, the Bandits, I think I got like 6 predictions right all year. So I'm going to do this strategically. It's going to be a 26-18 loss for Tampa.
26-18. That's an interesting score.
I had to do something weird.
Right.
Honestly, if I'm going to be honest with you, I meant 28-16, but I'm just going to stick with it now.
Yeah, 26-18. Maybe that'll be a scoregami. I don't know if that'll follow that Twitter account, but different NFL scores whenever there's a new one. I'm going to go 24-20 Dallas, just because. Yeah, I don't think the Bucs have it, unfortunately. The Cowboys are the favorites, and I don't know. It's tough. And like Zach said, I'm very often wrong. I'm wrong 99.9% of the time. The 0.1 that I'm right, it's about something wrong, stupid and meaningless. So yeah, I'm wrong way more often than I'm right. So who knows what's going to happen?
Hopefully, as you say, Carter, the Buccaneers can tell you to shove it.
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
Right, as they very often do. So yeah, that would be beautiful. That would be wonderful. I love being told to shove it, because that means that I'm wrong. But anyways, yeah. So that's our predictions, and I want to thank y'all for listening. All of y'all that have stayed through this whole episode, listen to us, talk about this Bucs game. Just following us on social media. If you're not following us on social media, please do. It's RBLR Sports on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Like and subscribe. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see y'all next week, hopefully after a Bucs W. And as always,
go Bucs.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.